much, Program Director, for those nice words of introduction. The leadership of CASAC, Mr. Lawson Naidu, Executive Secretary of CASAC, and other members in the leadership of CASAC present, as well as leaders of PARI present, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I take this opportunity to thank the leadership of CASAC and PARI for inviting me to deliver the keynote address at this very important conference, which is a follow-up to another conference that the two organizations hosted in September last year. I apologize that I'm not able to deliver this address in person, which is what I would have preferred, instead of a virtual address. Apologies from me again also about yesterday. I had prepared and recorded the paper, a speech that was to be played yesterday, but technology let us down, and I just want to thank all of you for your patience and for your understanding, and for the arrangement that I could still deliver the address this morning virtually. The conference that PARI and CASAC organized last year happened about 3 months after I handed over to the president the last two parts of the report of the commission. And the two organizations kindly invited me to deliver a keynote address at their conference in September. Unfortunately, I was not able to do so because I was still busy with correcting some errors that we had discovered in the report. And apart from that, I was completely exhausted after running the commission for 4 years. I want to take this opportunity also to thank PARI and CASAC for the initiative they took to organize last year's conference to discuss and gain an understanding of the Commission's findings and recommendations. As I understand the position, either before or after the conference, these organizations took the position that they would put pressure on government to implement the recommendations of the Commission, or at least some of them. I understand that this was not just simply a decision to put pressure that the government should implement the resolutions or recommendations of the Commission, but actually it was a decision to put pressure on government to intensify its fight against corruption. In fact, there were a number of other organizations who took the decision that they would not allow government to let the Commission's report lie in some office gathered dust. They decided that the damage that had been caused by state capture in this country was too far-reaching for the Commission's report, its findings, and recommendations to be allowed to be ignored. The Defend Our Democracy is one of those organizations which already in June 2022, actually before I handed over the last two parts of the report, took the decision and called for the implementation of the recommendations of the Commission. Another entity which appears to have taken such a decision also is the African Public Procurement Unit at the University of Stellenbosch, which said it was inspired by part of what was written in the report about public procurement, that it decided that it would have 2 workshops to discuss how it could assist in ensuring that there is an appropriate public procurement reform in this country. Another institution is the Institute for African Alternatives, which also has taken a decision that it would like to put pressure on government, on Parliament, to implement all the 16 recommendations that the Commission made that related to Parliament. In fact, there were other organizations, including faith-based organizations, which came together and took the stance that pressure needed to be put on all concerned to make sure that the recommendations of the Commission were implemented. I appreciate that when these organizations, including ARI and CASAC, took the decision they took that they would put pressure on government to implement the recommendations of the Commission. It had nothing to do with me personally, but it had everything to do with their commitment to this country. Some complain that people will then report wrongdoing because they want money. But I say, so what? If they disclose corruption and the country recovers money that it might otherwise not have been able to recover, so what is the problem that they disclose this information because they want money? So it would appear that the Department of Justice is doing something with regard to the protection of whistleblowers. The question is simply whether it is enough. I know that you will then consider in your conference and deal with the question of whether what the department proposes is enough. I also want to refer to one of the recommendations that were made by the Commission with regard to Parliament, namely the establishment of a portfolio committee that would oversee the presidency. Parliament had indicated that it was undertaking a study of other jurisdictions to see how this is done in regard to the presidency or a prime minister, and I'm not aware that they've made any decision on this. And then I want to also touch on procurement. You will recall that the Commission made extensive recommendations on procurement because it came to the conclusion that most of our corruption comes from procurement. The taps relating to tenders need to be closed. That was the attitude of the Commission. And in this regard, the Commission recommended the establishment of a public procurement anti-corruption agency. The President indicated that that agency, just like the Anti-State Capture and Corruption Commission, would have to be considered together with other suggestions that the advisory council that he has established, the Anti-Corruption Advisory Council, will consider. I'm not aware that the President has made any decision in this regard, but I'm aware that the Public Procurement Bill of 2023 doesn't make any reference to such a body and makes a reference to a tribunal. And it seems to me that when one has regard to the features of the Public Procurement Anti-Corruption Agency that the Commission had in mind, and one looks at the tribunal that the Public Procurement Bill of 2023 has, it seems that there is very little that the two have in common. It would be a pity if ultimately the President does not embrace this decision of a Public Procurement Anti-Corruption Agency. Because of all the recommendations, in my view, that was the most important. And it had features, the recommendation had features that we have no doubt would make a serious dent on corruption in this country. So, but the President has not said that he has rejected that, but it is strange that the Public Procurement Bill doesn't refer to it. And yet in his response last year, he had indicated that the Public Procurement Bill would accommodate most of the recommendations of the Commission on Public Procurement. In fact, the President had indicated that they accepted and supported most of the recommendations of the Commission. But when in regard to public procurement, but when you look at that bill, I think there are only about 4 out of 10 or more recommendations that the Commission made, only about 4 that seem to be giving effect to. Before I finish, I just want to refer to the reaction of the private sector to the report of the Commission. In this regard, I've been particularly impressed by the role that Business Unity South Africa and Business Leadership South Africa are playing in trying to make sure that the recommendations of the report are implemented. I'm aware that BUSA has concluded a memorandum of understanding with the NPA with a view to ensuring that a certain category of recommendations of the Commission are implemented. And I'm aware of the role that BLSA and maybe Business Unit South Africa as well have played together with IPS to produce an anti-corruption working guide, which for companies in South Africa, which gives guidance to companies as to how to tackle corruption. I have no doubt that if many companies embrace that guide, that will go a long way to making a dent in corruption in the workplace. And I hope that many companies will embrace it. Lastly, I want to say to CASAC and PARI and other organizations which have stood up to put pressure on government to ensure that the recommendations of the Commission are implemented. Your role in the fight against corruption is noticed. Please continue. There are going to be challenges on the road ahead as all of us who fight corruption continue our fight. It's not a rewarding job, but all of us need to do it for this country, for our children and their children. Please go on with the good job. And I think that one day, South Africa will thank you for the role you are playing. Thank you very much.